In this video I will show you how I put together a kitchen island. It's a one-row island with only 2 cabinets, but nevertheless it's an island, and it will be connected to the floor, and it will have a panel at each end and a big panel on the back. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is assemble some cabinets, and they are assembled in pretty much the same way as we do with the cabinets sitting on the wall, with a few minor details different. And I will speed up the process. There's no need for you to see me assembling cabinets, but when it comes to those special details related to the island cabinets, we will slow down and I will explain what's happening. Since the island has a panel attached to the back of the cabinets, we need some special brackets to secure that panel, and that's why we don't need to keep the brackets that are used normally to hang the cabinets on the wall. So they can be thrown out together with these other parts shown here. We don't need those as well, and we can continue assembling. This part I'm picking up here is the assembly kit for the kitchen island, and that's the one that makes it possible to connect the big panel to the cabinets. This assembly kit comes with some brackets that we will use instead of those we just threw in the garbage. When you create the order for Ikea, it's important that you add one assembly kit for the island for every single cabinet you have in the island. If you have your dishwasher sitting in the island, it's also important that you add an assembly kit for that space where the dishwasher will go, so you can have a panel sitting at the back of the dishwasher, right? So one for that as well. When you're attaching these brackets to the side gable of the cabinet, it's important that the bracket is pushed to the back in these oval holes for the upper one, and for the lower bracket that I'm putting on here, you can see it's pushed inside in the oval holes. Otherwise the bracket will be protruding the cabinet and you will not be able to put the back of the cabinet on. So pay attention to that. Now that we have those special brackets sitting in place, I can continue assembling the cabinet like we always do. And then when all the pegs and the lock nuts and whatnot have been put in, I can do the other side of the cabinet before I put everything together. When it's time to put some nails in the back of the cabinet, it's very important that you make sure that the cabinet is square. Otherwise, when we get to the panel, you'll have difficulties making the panel fit in a nice way. Here we go with the legs, and as you know, I always put the base plate of the legs on the cabinet before I put it away and hang it on the wall. And for these cabinets in the island, I will do the exact same thing. Put on the base plate. Now it's time to put on those strips of MDF that are part of the assembly kit. The purpose of those strips is actually only to fill out the void space between the back panel and the edge of the cabinet, because if we will just put the panel up and attach some screws from the inside, it will pull the back panel into the cabinet, and we don't want to do that. So we need to cut 2 pieces out of those strips, and so they can sit on the inside in that open space. So we measure, make a line with a pencil, and cut them. And when they have been cut to length, we have to mount them on the back of the cabinet. And that is done from the inside through those brackets that we just added when we assembled the cabinets. And as you can see in this picture, we will add 2 screws. That is the little short fat screw. The same screw that goes into the side of the cabinet when we are putting the bracket on. This is fairly easy. There's already holes in that MDF strip, so you cannot do it wrong. Just make sure that you add 2 screws at each side, right? First one side, then get on the inside and do the other one. silver part of that MDF strip, which is sitting there at the bottom, as you can see, is attached to the bracket in a slightly different way, because there's only one screw, and that is the very, very short screw in the package. It's only 1/2 inch long, and you add it right there. See, short screw, and you add it very short screw, and you add it right there in the middle of the bracket. You cannot go wrong. See, I made a circle for you. So there it is. The first cabinet has been assembled. We got the island assembly kit in place, and we can move on, after a bit of water, to the second cabinet in the island. I'm sorry that I cannot do it any faster than this, but while we sit through and watch the assembly of this second cabinet, I want to share a tip with you that if you are creating your own layout plan and you're making an island, I suggest, if you can, to not make it any longer than 8 feet. This is 96 inches, because that is the length of the biggest panel Ikea have for the fridge and for the island. It's 36 by 96 inches, and that means that if you can keep it below 96 inches, you can have a back panel in one piece only. If you go higher than 96 inches in length, you need to have 2 panels that are joined somewhere on the back of that island. Just a few thoughts and something to think about when you're creating your layout plan. You might as well add some mindfulness to the whole deal. So here we are assembling the legs again, and I just want to add a few comments to the whole leg situation, because I know there's some people on YouTube that say, oh, you cannot use those legs when you have an island. And I said that's nonsense, because of course you can, because the island just needs to be secured into the floor. If you want to have an island that you can shift around, you cannot use those legs, and you need to build a frame. I have a video showing how you will do just that out of 2x4s and some adjustable legs. So you can do that too, but for any other island, use the legs. They're perfectly fine, and there's 25 years of warranty. Now that we have completed the assembly of the 2 cabinets that goes into our island, we can start looking at the island support bracket, I think they call it. And that is the bracket that are being attached to the floor and into the cabinet. So the cabinets are securely fastened to the floor, and they're pretty much straightforward. The number of brackets, though, as you can see in that little folder that comes with the brackets, depends on how many cabinets. In this case, we need 3 of them. You'll notice that I'm doing it a bit different than Ikea, because I put the brackets on one side of that piece of 2x4 and not one on each side, and that is clearly because it really doesn't matter, but it's just so much easier to attach those and secure them under the cabinet when the cabinet is in place, when they're sitting on the same side. Otherwise you need some difficult joints on your arms to get in there. So make it easy for yourself and put them on the same side of that 2x4. And with all 3 brackets assembled, we are ready to build the island. So I have marked on the floor where I want to put the island, and I have put the legs on the island, and I have attached them next to each other, holding them together with a clamp. And because this is a tile floor, I cannot drill the hole while the cabinets are sitting where they are. I need to remove the cabinets again. That's why I have not tied them together. So what I do now is I place my brackets under the cabinets according to that sketch we just had before, and then I take my pencil and I mark on the floor where I want the brackets to be sitting, so I can remove the cabinets and drill the holes. Before I remove those cabinets, I just want to tell you that if it was a floor made out of wood or something soft where I can put a screw in easily, I would not remove the cabinets at this point in time. I would tie the cabinets together like you'll see me do after I drill the holes, but I will use a tool like the one shown here, and then I will reach in and I will secure all the brackets into the floor. I find that easier than have to shift the cabinets away and put them back in the place. But no, we cannot do that here. So I need to remove the cabinets in order for me to drill some holes in through those ceramic tiles. It's not vinyl tiles, it's ceramic. So they're pretty hard to drill in. Let's get started with those. Again, I will do this as fast as possible, but I think you have time to go get a coffee. So all three support bracket has been attached to the floor, and we can put the cabinets back in place. Next up is connecting these two cabinets to each other. I do not spend any time leveling them as it is. I just make sure that they're reasonable level and that all 8 legs are touching the floor. But then I line up the cabinets next to each other and make sure that the front is flush and all that, same height and whatnot, and I connect them together in the standard fashion. 3 screws at the front, 2 at the back. And as you can see, I'm using clamps, and I'm having 4 clamps on this connection because it's also important that you have a clamp on the back at the bottom. Otherwise, you are not sure that it will be sitting absolutely perfect. Now we're getting to the leveling of the cabinet. I will put my laser up like I would with any other base cabinet where I'm checking if it's horizontal. Clearly looking for something. Before we do that though, I will measure and find out that we have minimum 4.5 inches from the floor to the cabinet, because we don't want to have anything less than that. And sometimes the floor is not quite horizontal, so I'm checking all the way around, and if necessary, I'm adjusting the cabinet so the lowest point is 4.5 inches from the floor, and then I'm ready to start leveling. When everything is nice and horizontal, it's time to check that the island is positioned in the room where I want it to be. And this can be difficult. Sometimes the floor is not put in parallel to the wall. And that means if I put the island absolutely parallel to the base cabinets on a wall where the floor is not parallel to that wall, it will look like the island is not sitting correct on the floor, and we don't want that to happen. So I find it the first priority is to get the island to visually be parallel to the floor. In this case, it was actually not very easy, so I went back and forth many times, because this is one of those situations where you want to make sure that you do it right, because you will walk into that room, and if the island is not sitting where it's supposed to be sitting, parallel to the floor, to the lines on the floor, then you will see it every time. So that's why I can spend so much time. See, in this case, I'm using my square, and I will measure from the front of the cabinet down to the grout line. But the problem is that the grout line in this case was not a straight line. So, but I ended up settled for the position, and then finally I was ready to attach those cabinets to the island support bracket. And then just one final check to see if everything is still level before I start attaching the cabinets to the support brackets. And as you can see here, I put 2 screws in each bracket. Now that the cabinets has been attached to the island support bracket, we just need to put in those last few screws you can see in this picture before we can move on to the panels. When I put panels on an island like this, I always let the panels run all the way to the floor. For the back of the island, I use the big 3x8 feet panel, and for the end of the island, I use the panel that is 26 by 36 inches. So we're starting with the one at the back. And rule number one, I never ever cut at the floor, because if you will wash your floor around the panel will be ruined if you have an open cut right there on the floor. So we don't do that. We always cut at the top. I know some installers will just seal the open end of that panel with some paint or maybe even caulk around the panel, but I do not do that. I do not cut the panel at the floor, period. The first panel I will cut is the one at the back, and I do that in 2 steps. First, I cut the length of it. I measure the length of the island and I add 1/8 of an inch. And I do that because I do not want it to become too short. That would be a disaster, so rather a tiny bit too long. And I will explain and show you why that is a bit later. So I cut the length of the panel first. And that is exactly what I have done now. I have cut it to length, and not to the height yet, but to length only. And I will bring it in, and then I will make sure that it is sitting level on the floor. And if I have leveled my cabinets to perfection, it should be level to the cabinets as well. So I bring in my little level, and I need a clamp so it doesn't fall over. And then I possibly need a shim to make sure that the panel is horizontal. And when I have done that, I can measure from the top of the cabinet up to the top of the panel to see how much I need to cut off. And if I don't have the same measurement at both ends of this island, I need to check whether my panel is level or my cabinet is level, because clearly if both of them are level, the distance should be the same. And when that is done, I can bring my panel outside again and cut off the distance I just measured. And here it is again, my panel, and I can put it on the back of the island. At this point in time, I do not attach it to the island with screws just yet. And that is because I want the back panel to be able to move in either direction when I put on the end panels. So that tiny little extra length I have on the panel is not sitting at one end at the island, but at both ends. Now it is. I'm making sure that it's sitting exactly where I want it, and I'm ready to put on the end panels. And the 2 end panels are put on in pretty much in the same way as the back panel, except they are not cut to width, because I let it be 26. So I have an uncut edge at the front and at the back, which means that I only cut it to height. So I put it on the floor at the end of the island. And once again, I make sure that it's sitting horizontally. I might need to give it a little bit of shim. And then again, I measure how much it is too high, and then I cut that off, and the panel is ready to be attached to the island. And with one panel in, I'm ready to do the exact same thing at the other end. So let's get that over with. Now, with all 3 panels attached to the island with clamps only, it's time to secure them with screws. And before I do that, I make sure that that extra length I talked about before on the back panel is distributed evenly at both ends. And as you can see in this picture, there is a little bit of gap there. And don't worry that that panel actually not fully attached to the cabinet there at the back. That just ensures that the back of the island, there will be no gap between those 2 panels where they meet. And when the countertop comes on, you cannot see that it's not pushed all the way in. So I find that's an easy way to make sure that those 2 panels at the back do not have a gap between them. And with all the clamps still in place, I start to put screws into the panels to secure them to the island. And I start with the 2 panels at the end. In this case, I put in 3 screws at the front and 3 screws at the back, so I make sure that that end panel is securely pushed towards the back panel. So the before mentioned gap is still not present. Very important. finally we're ready to put some screws into the back panel from the inside of the cabinet. And please take a moment here to look at those screws. That is the screws you want to use. It's the pan head screws that comes with the panels. Because if you use these screws and you put them right there in that bracket, not in the middle of the bracket where that little oval hole is, but at the top or at the bottom of that bracket, where there's kind of like a rim that has been pressed up, you see it again in this picture, then you make sure that if you have followed these instructions, that the screw will not pop through and make a crack on the other side of that panel, because you don't want that to happen. It happened to me once, and I have to go to Ikea and pick up a new panel. Not fun at all. At the bottom, you put it in the exact same spot. Don't be tempted to put it in the middle there where that little screw is sitting. You don't want to do that. You want to put it at the bottom bracket at those two holes. We got one right there, and there's even room for more at the bottom. So that's where you want to put it. Otherwise, it will pop through, I guarantee you. Use these screws that I just showed you and put them where I just pointed out, and you will have no problems with that panel at all. The top screws are easy to put in because you can apply pressure from the other side of the panel, but the bottom ones you just don't want to put in the screw and just let it go all the way through, because it will just push the panel away from the island. So what I do here is I go on the other side. What I did before is I just attached the screw, gave it, a 1/4 of an inch into the back of the cabinet, and then I go on the other side and I put my foot against the panel. Make sure that I press firmly, and then I can put those screws in that I just secured from the inside. And in that way, the panel is sitting against the island and not pushed away. So do that and you will have a beautiful island in no time. The drawers, you know how to put those in. Otherwise, you can find out how in these videos. If you find this video helpful at all, please subscribe to this channel. Thank you.